Hello, this is Blake. I'm a comics collector. I collect art. I'm an artist. I like movies. I'm a cinephile. And I do reviews. And this is the review for Spider-Woman #1. I was a little disappointed. The story was written by Carla Pacheco, who I've never heard of. I've heard of Carlos Pacheco, the artist, but I'm wondering if there is some kind of familial relation there. The interior art was by someone, and let me go ahead and say I'm going to butcher all these names. Pere Perez, and there was a backup story by Paulo Seguera and Oren Jr. The one that I bought was the cover by Ron Lim, who, I've always kind of liked Ron Lim. He's been working at Marvel, it seems, for, decades now. And I think there are like 12 or 13 covers or more, and that's just going by the very first page, which is basically a credits page. Half of the page is dedicated to listing cover artists. I actually picked up a copy, I think from Comic Tom. It's an exclusive variant cover by Oliver or Olivier Coipel. I don't know. I'm just going to butcher all these names. I think it has a great illustration of Spider-Woman on the cover, even if she looks like she's sitting down instead of flying, as I'm sure it's intended. It doesn't have any backgrounds, but, it's still a great illustration, and I think it's better than, honestly, of the other ones that I've seen. And based on this cover, I would say I would probably have given the art chores to Coipel. I mean, this looks like the character to me, as opposed to what's depicted inside, which I'll get to in a minute. Back to the credits page, there's a story so far style paragraph describing the character's past, but I think that sort of thing should occur within the story instead of having it, written out on the first page. It just seems kind of lazy to me. Spider-Woman is a character who has been around since sometime in the 70s, which I think she appeared in Marvel Spotlight number 32. She was created because the company didn't want someone else having a Spider character, because Spider-Man was their flagship character and still is. Basically it was done for trademark and copyright. And I think she was a villain, or villainess, working for Hydra initially. And she actually got her own series. There weren't that many female leads back then, and most of them did not have comic series like Spider-Woman. I think female characters in general have had a history of being horribly written. I mean, Spider-Woman is a prime example of that, because she was really, really horribly written. A lot of her villains were like characters like the Needle, the Enforcer, the Brothers Grimm, Gypsy Moth, Daddy Longlegs. There was just a number of D-level characters, but I liked the art. They had some of my favorite artists like Carmine Infantino and Steve Leialoha. He drew everything great, but the reason to buy the book was the art, not for the story, which is true for a lot of comics, I guess. A very horribly written book. And as far as this first issue of volume 18 or whatever it is, as far as the writing, the tradition continues. It's really bad. There are 30 pages, but I don't feel like I got my money's worth at $4.99. I'll start with the backup story, which isn't really a backup story, but it feels like one. It kind of feels like they wrote the first 20 odd pages and then decided that there were so many holes and so many things that aren't explained, having the new costume and all that. It's almost like they hired another artist to polish the turd, which they didn't polish it very well. When the art changes to Paulo Seguera from Pere Perez, again butchering the names, I think it took a step up in quality. It's still, the art really doesn't do a whole lot for me. Seguera draws Spider-Woman a lot more attractive than Perez does, and seems to have a better handle on drawing anatomy and figures. But the first page that he draws is a pinup page of several D-list characters and Spider-Woman fighting a bunch of Doctor Doom robot lookalikes. It's literally just a pinup with some word balloons. That's followed by 7 pages that I would have just cut from the book because they don't really serve a whole lot of purpose. I mean, I don't understand why she can't fly or glide home in this book, because she has to get a cab home after fighting a battle with these Doom robots, and she has to bum some money. And then there are 2 pages at home with I'm assuming is her husband and kid, but I don't know if they're married because neither one of them are like showing a ring or anything. And her dude is apparently a stay-at-home dad who lets this woman go out and try to earn all the money. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And the character not having any money or not having a job or, having to get a ride home in a cab, it just does not make any sense to me. So, I mean, look at it like this. You have this absolutely beautiful woman who can lift several tons overhead, and she can fly, I'm assuming. She used to be able to, or glide or something, and she can shoot bioelectrical blasts from her hands, and she can't find any work. She can't get a job, really? And I'm assuming this next part, because they don't really inform you inside the, in the context of the story, she's part of some volunteer super team. She's completely okay with her stay-at-home dude, who doesn't even look like he's trying to find a job to help pay the rent. Not to mention Jessica Drew ran her own business for a few years. You would think she would just start up her own business again or something. And I also thought there was something weird about her just wearing her costume at all times. But the next 3 pages are probably, and towards the end of the book, are probably the most insulting to the intelligence of anyone reading this. Jessica Drew goes shopping in costume at a business that caters to people wanting to buy battle tights. I swear to you. And it turns out that the costume contains circuitry to monitor health and location. I guess it's supplied by some villain, which I'm sure has something to do with Hydra. But the seamstress, who I'm guessing works for Hydra, was literally waiting for Spider-Woman to shop at her store. That's what the writer came up with, and that was approved by editorial. So she's been waiting, for this random superhero. They're waiting on this one random superhero to show up at a business that supplies costumes for superheroes, because they knew she'd want a new costume at some point. I don't know who would read this and think it's a good story just based on that. Back to the beginning, back to the credits page. I just noticed the title of this is New Costume Who Dis. That's what it says. I'll just say it doesn't seem to fit the character, and just based on that title alone, I will say the book is probably not aimed at me. Anyway, the story so far, Blurred, tells you who the main character is. The worst part is everything that is stated in the credits page is repeated on the next page. And I say the next page, but there's a full page ad on page 2. Why is there an ad on page 2? Anyway, she says her name again, which they just told you, and then she says she's an Avenger and a former spy again, and even reminds you that she's a mom again, which they tell you on the credits page. And so really, you could have either lost that credits page, or you could have lost the first page with her saying all these things, and you wouldn't have lost anything. So anyway, the main story, not really important. Spider-Woman comes across as a very poor human being. She's apparently having menstrual cramps because she has a headache and really bad attitude, and she hates kids. And when I say she hates kids, she literally throws one kid overboard from a yacht in the middle of the ocean. You would think an adult would go, this is a teaching moment. This is a moment you could, instruct a child that their behavior is not acceptable. Instead, she's, abusive toward the kid and throws him overboard, which I guess it's played for laughs, but I thought it was just stupid. Then, of course, there's not one but 2 attempts to kidnap this girl in a wheelchair who's having a birthday party, and I guess her father has hired Spider-Woman to protect the kids, more specifically the man's daughter. Spider-Woman ends up, protecting the daughter by destroying pretty much everything on the yacht, which, again, I think they tried to kind of explain all that in the backup story. The daughter gets an electric car on a yacht. She has a pony, which she rides around on, even though she's paralyzed. Did I mention it's on a yacht? And she's not attacked by supervillains or someone who might give Spider-Woman a little bit of a an even match or anything. So there's a little bit of conflict, but instead it's a bunch of nondescript guys in weird sailor outfits, like they just escaped from the big song and dance number from Hail Caesar, that Coen Brothers movie. I don't know, weird. Like I said, I was disappointed. The villain that appears in Shadow doesn't even seem to have a motivation of his own other than for his plan for Spider-Woman, whatever that is. When the villain has no real motivation of their own other than to attack the lead character, it usually doesn't bode very well for story quality in a comic. Spider-Woman destroying everything in sight just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. You would think if she's getting paid for this, she's going to get a bill for destroying a brand new car on a yacht and pulling down a helicopter, which that had to have caused some damage to the yacht, endangering a lot of kids, and with all these stupid decisions that she makes. She throws one of the kids at a kidnapper at one point, which doesn't seem like a smart thing to do, but it's the same kid who's not politically correct or says some really bad things or rude things, so it's okay to treat him very poorly. You would think somebody in an editorial, who was in charge of this would have went, you know what, maybe we need to rewrite this because it doesn't really make the character look very heroic, throwing children. But based on all this, I would not come back for a second issue. I'm not coming back for a second issue. It's just very poorly done. It's a bad story. I feel tired after reading this book because it sapped my strength. It was so bad that I wanted to throw up like Jessica Drew does, really horribly, just barf all over the damn place. Which that's another thing. I mean, they seem to want to try to make her as unattractive as possible. Why else would you have Spider-Woman vomiting, soul coughing all over the place? What's really bad is, and I'm saying that probably should have been the final page instead of getting fitted for a new costume, which, having her puke and pass out on you could have just had her collapse. You didn't have to have her projectile vomit like she's Linda Blair from The Exorcist. I wouldn't recommend this. You might pick up the cover by Hoypel. The story is brain dead, so I don't know. I tried reading it and getting through it, but I won't be back for another one. And that's it. I hope I didn't bore you too much. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend this. The daughter